Hey, before we dive in, if you're learning English and you want to understand the real world through it, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell. Every video here helps you grow your English while teaching you something genuinely useful about life. Now, let's get into something that affects every single person on this planet, whether you're a student, a worker, a business owner, or just someone trying to save money for the future. Imagine this. You work hard all year. You save $1,000. You put it in a box under your bed. You don't touch it. You don't spend it. You feel proud, because you saved money. Now, 1 year passes. You open the box. The money is still there. All $1,000, right in front of you. But here's the shocking part, that money is not worth the same as it was before. Something quietly, invisibly, and silently stole from you while you were sleeping. You didn't hear it. You didn't see it. No alarm went off. No thief broke into your home. But the value inside those bills, it disappeared. A little bit of it, every single day, every single month, every single year. And most people go their entire lives without understanding what happened to them. This video is going to change that. We are going to talk about why your money loses value every year, and what that really means for your life, your future, and your dreams. So stay with me, because by the end of this video, you will see money in a completely different way. And that shift in thinking could genuinely change your life. So let's start from the very beginning. What is money, really? Most people think money is wealth. They think if you have more money, you are richer. But that is actually not completely true. Money is not wealth itself, money is a tool that represents value. It is a system that humans agreed on to trade things more easily. Instead of trading a chicken for a pair of shoes, we use money as a middle step. Money is just an agreement. A shared belief. And like all beliefs, it can change. Hundreds of years ago, money was made of gold and silver. If you had a gold coin, it had real physical value. You could melt it down. You could use the metal. The coin was worth something because the material it was made from was worth something. But today, money is just paper. Or even more abstract, it is just a number in a computer. The $20 bill in your pocket costs almost nothing to make. Its value comes only from the fact that everyone agrees it has value. And that agreement, that shared belief, can weaken over time. When it weakens, prices go up. And your money buys less. This is the foundation of everything we are going to talk about today. Now let's talk about the word that is at the heart of this entire video. That word is inflation. Inflation is the process by which the general level of prices in an economy rises over time. When inflation happens, each unit of money buys less than it did before. So if a loaf of bread cost $1 last year, and now it costs $1.10, that is inflation. The bread didn't become more valuable. Your dollar just became less powerful. Think of it like this. Imagine your money is a glass of water. Inflation is like a hole in the bottom of the glass. Slowly, quietly, the water leaks out. You don't notice it at first. But over days, weeks, months, years, the glass gets emptier and emptier. And the crazy thing is, the glass still looks the same from the outside. It still says $100 on it. But the actual purchasing power, what you can buy with it, is shrinking constantly. So when someone says, I have more money than I did 5 years ago, the real question is, can you buy more with it? Because if the answer is no, you haven't gotten richer at all. You have just been running in place while the ground moves backward beneath you. So where does inflation come from? Why does it happen? There are several reasons, and understanding them is key to understanding the whole story. The first reason is something called money supply. When governments or central banks print more money and put it into the economy, there is suddenly more money chasing the same amount of goods. Think about it, if there are 10 apples and $10 in the world, each apple costs $1. But if you suddenly print 10 more dollars, now there are $20 chasing those same 10 apples. The price of each apple rises. That is inflation caused by too much money in circulation. The second reason inflation happens is demand. When lots of people want the same thing at the same time, sellers can charge more for it. During the COVID-19 pandemic, for example, everyone wanted hand sanitizer, medicine, and home office equipment all at once. Demand shot up dramatically. But supply didn't increase fast enough. So prices went up. This is called demand pull inflation. The third cause is cost push inflation, when the cost of making things goes up, and businesses pass that extra cost on to you. If oil prices rise, transportation becomes more expensive, food costs more to deliver, and everything gets pricier. All three forces can push prices higher and make your money weaker. Now here's something that will really put this in perspective. Let's travel back in time. In the United States in 1950, $1 could buy what would cost you about $12 to $13 today. That means the dollar has lost more than 90% of its purchasing power in roughly 70 years. If your grandparents saved $100 in 1950 and hid it under their mattress, and you found it today, it would only be worth what about $8 bought back then. Their savings would have been almost completely destroyed by inflation, silently, over decades, without anyone touching the money. This is not a story about bad luck. This is a story about how money works. And the terrifying thing is that this process never stops. It is happening right now, today, to your money. The question is not whether inflation will affect you. The question is whether you will be ready for it. In Germany in the 1920s, inflation became so extreme, what economists call hyperinflation, that people needed wheelbarrows full of cash just to buy a loaf of bread. Prices were doubling every few days. People would get paid in the morning and rush to spend their money before it lost even more value by the afternoon. This extreme example shows us what can happen when inflation gets completely out of control. In more recent history, Venezuela and Zimbabwe both experienced devastating hyperinflation. In Zimbabwe, the inflation rate reached over 200 million% at its peak. The government had to print $100 trillion bills, and they were still nearly worthless. Families who had worked and saved for decades found that their entire life savings couldn't buy a week's worth of groceries. These are extreme cases. But they are powerful reminders that money's value is never guaranteed. It can disappear faster than you ever imagined possible. Even in stable economies, with average inflation of 2 to 3% per year, after 35 years, prices double. The money you save today will only buy half as much by retirement. This is not a crisis. But it is a slow, steady, invisible robbery happening to everyone. So who is responsible for all of this? Who controls how much money exists and what it is worth? In most countries, there is a special institution called a central bank. In the United States, it is called the Federal Reserve, or the Federal. In Europe, it is the European Central Bank. In the United Kingdom, it is the Bank of England. These institutions have an enormous amount of power over the economy. They decide how much money is in circulation. They control interest rates. They influence how expensive or cheap it is to borrow money. Central banks try very carefully to manage the economy. They have a target inflation rate, usually around 2% per year. They believe a small amount of inflation is actually healthy. Why? Because if prices are slowly rising, people are encouraged to spend and invest their money now, rather than hold on to it. This keeps the economy moving. Businesses grow. Jobs are created. But when inflation rises too fast, things start to go wrong, and the central bank has to take action. The main tool they use is the interest rate. Raising it slows spending, lowering it encourages it. It is a constant balancing act, like trying to keep a bicycle upright while riding through constantly changing terrain. But here's the difficult truth. Central banks are not perfect. They can make mistakes. They can react too slowly, or move too aggressively. And sometimes, outside forces, like a global pandemic, a war, a natural disaster, or a sudden collapse in oil supply, can throw everything off balance no matter how carefully the central bank manages things. When Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022, global energy and food prices surged almost overnight. Sharp inflation spread across many countries that had nothing to do with that conflict. And beyond central banks, the actions of governments matter enormously. When governments spend more money than they collect in taxes, they run what is called a deficit. To cover that deficit, they often borrow, or work with the central bank to create new money. This increases the money supply. And as we already learned, more money chasing the same goods means inflation. Governments face constant pressure to spend, on healthcare, on defense, on infrastructure, on social programs, and that pressure can sometimes fuel inflation over the long term. The system is always fighting against itself. Okay, now let's make this very personal. How does inflation actually affect your real life, right now, today? Let's start with groceries. Have you noticed that things at the supermarket seem to cost more every year? A bag of rice. A dozen eggs. A bottle of cooking oil. These are not luxury items. They are basic necessities. When the prices of basic goods go up, it is the people with the least money who feel it the most. A wealthy person spending a few extra cents on eggs barely notices. But a family living on a tight budget? That extra cost can mean skipping a meal. Think about housing too. In many cities around the world, the cost of renting or buying a home has increased dramatically over the past decade. In cities like London, New York, and Sydney, average housing costs have far outpaced wage growth. Young people are finding it harder and harder to afford homes that their parents bought relatively easily a generation ago. And think about wages. You might be thinking, okay, but my salary goes up every year too. Doesn't that cancel out inflation? Only if your salary grows at the same rate as inflation. If inflation grows faster, which happens frequently, you are actually getting poorer even while your paycheck number gets bigger. This is called a decrease in real wages, and it is one of the most common and painful effects of inflation for working people. Here is something that many people find surprising: not everyone loses from inflation. In fact, inflation creates winners and losers. One of the biggest winners is someone who has borrowed money. When you take out a loan, you borrow a fixed amount. But as inflation rises, the purchasing power of money falls. So you pay back your loan with dollars that are worth less than the dollars you borrowed. Inflation effectively reduces the real cost of debt over time. This is one of the reasons that governments actually benefit from having some inflation. Many governments carry enormous national debts. Over time, steady inflation shrinks the real value of that debt. The government still pays back the same number, but those numbers represent less and less real wealth. It is almost as if inflation is slowly erasing a portion of what they owe. On the other hand, people who depend on fixed incomes, retirees, pensioners, people who lend money at fixed rates, tend to lose. If you are retired and living on a fixed pension, and inflation runs at 4% per year, your buying power shrinks every single year without you doing anything wrong. You saved your whole life. You did everything right. And the system still works against you. That is a deep and painful injustice that many older people feel very personally. Asset owners, people who own real estate, stocks, gold, or other physical and financial assets, often do much better during inflation than people who hold only cash. Why? Because the value of real things tends to rise with inflation. A house worth $200,000 today might be worth $260,000 in 10 years, simply because prices in general have risen. The house didn't change. The dollars just became worth less. So if you own something real, something physical and useful, its price tends to keep up with the world around it. But to own assets, you need capital to start with. And many people who struggle most with inflation are exactly the people who have the least capital to invest. This is one of the deepest and most frustrating ways that inflation widens the gap between the wealthy and everyone else. Those at the top have assets that protect them. Those at the bottom have only cash, and cash is the thing inflation attacks most directly. So what can ordinary people actually do to protect themselves from inflation? This is the most practical part of our whole conversation. The first and most fundamental principle is this: do not let your money sit idle. Cash sitting in a checking account or under your mattress is being eaten by inflation every single day. You have to make your money work. You have to put it somewhere where it can grow at least as fast as inflation, and ideally, faster. One of the most widely recommended ways to do this is investing in the stock market. Historically, over long periods of time, stock markets in developed economies have returned an average of around 7 to 10% per year. That means people who invest regularly in diversified index funds, which spread your money across hundreds of companies at once, have historically grown their wealth faster than inflation has eroded it. Of course, markets go up and down in the short term, and there are risks. But over decades, investing in stocks has been one of the most reliable ways to protect and build wealth for ordinary people. Real estate is another asset that has traditionally kept pace with or outpaced inflation. When you buy property, you own something physical that has real utility. People need places to live. As prices rise with inflation, so does the value of real estate. And if you rent the property out, you receive income that can also adjust upward over time. Gold and other precious metals have been used as stores of value for thousands of years. It cannot be printed. There is a limited supply of it in the earth. And throughout history, it has maintained purchasing power across extremely long time periods. An ounce of gold could buy a fine Roman garment 2,000 years ago, and an ounce of gold today can still buy a quality suit. Paper money from 2,000 years ago, on the other hand, is completely worthless. In more recent years, some people have turned to cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin as a potential hedge against inflation. Bitcoin has a fixed maximum supply, no central bank can print more of it. However, cryptocurrencies are extremely volatile, and they are still new and unproven over the long term. They may play a role in protecting wealth, but they carry significant risks that traditional assets do not. The key message is this: diversify, stay informed, and never let your money simply sit still while inflation eats it alive. Now let's connect this to something very personal: the reason you are watching this channel in the first place. You are learning English. And one of the most powerful things you can do for your financial future, regardless of where you live in the world, is to understand money. Not just how to earn it. Not just how to save it. But how it actually works. Because the rules of money are written in a language, both literally and metaphorically, and if you cannot read that language, you will always be at a disadvantage. Financial literacy, the ability to understand how money, interest, inflation, investing, and debt work, is one of the most valuable forms of knowledge a person can have. And yet it is rarely taught in schools. Most people learn about money by making mistakes, by struggling, by watching their savings slowly disappear without understanding why. But not you. Not after watching this video. You now have a foundation that many adults, in any country, in any language, simply do not have. And you built it while practicing your English. That is genuinely powerful. That is exactly what this channel is for. Keep going. Keep learning. And we will see you in the next one.